welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be, as I'm sure you've probably seen from the title, my top 5 favorite eyeshadow palettes of all time. So there's not really much more to say, but if you guys want to see my top 5 favorite eyeshadow palettes, then just keep watching. So I feel like the first one has to be the most obvious, the most basic. I know this is probably everybody's favorite eyeshadow palette, or it was at some point. The Morphe 350, the original 350 that they first came out with. But yeah, this is the Morphe 350 palette. I cannot tell you guys how long I used this palette exclusively for. I still do sometimes, to be honest, which is why it is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes of all time. Let me just start by saying the pigment quality in this is kind of iffy. So I feel like these shades right here are like really amazing. The shimmers are awesome, super creamy, but once you get over here to these darker browns, they are not chalky necessarily, but I don't know, they're not great quality eyeshadows. They're not super pigmented, so I just kind of stay away from the browns in this palette, the dark browns anyway. But the oranges are amazing. Like I said, the shimmers are awesome. With that being said, this palette retails for $22, I think. So the fact that a few of these brown shades aren't the best doesn't really bother me. And that's why it's not like disqualified from this whole category of like being my all-time favorite eyeshadow palette. I feel like the quality and the colors of the other eyeshadows in this palette make it one of my top favorites. Let me just swatch some of them for you. I'm gonna swatch this one right here. This is like my all-time favorite color, I think. Okay, so that looks like Cheetos on my finger. I don't know if it's gonna focus, but this is just like a super pretty, like vivid orange. I love, love, love to use this in my crease. You guys know, if you watch my channel, I love warm eyeshadows. This one is one of my favorite of all time. It's just such a pretty, like super bright orange color. It's not even picking up on camera like how it is in person. So another one of my favorite colors in this palette is this one right here. It's like a super pretty champagne pink kind of color. This one I like to use wet, so I feel like the swatch is not going to be that great, but when you put it on your brush and you use it wet, it is super pretty and like super blinding. So there it is on my hand. It's coming off a little bit frosty, but it is definitely like a really nice light kind of like iridescent pink. And like I said, once you wet your brush, it looks amazing. I really love this color to use on the lid. So my second favorite eyeshadow palette, and these are not in any order, I'm just kind of pulling them randomly. My second is the Naked Basics by Urban Decay. This is the original Naked Basics palette. I think they have 2 now. This one's the original. I cannot tell you guys how many times I use this palette exclusively. When I first got it, it was literally all I was using. It's a lot more warm tone than the 2 that they came out with, but I used to take like these 2 colors right here and stick them in my crease and think that I had like the best eyeshadow ever, but it's because they blend so amazing. I was a beginner when I first started using this and I had no idea how to blend eyeshadows or how to do any of that, but these eyeshadows were so blendable and so smooth that it was super easy for me. And like even with somebody that had like no knowledge on how to blend eyeshadows, it was easy. So that's why this was one of my favorite palettes for a really long time. It's also pretty pigmented. I mean, look at that. Literally barely put my finger over that and it's like the best swatch ever. It's not patchy. It's super smooth and buttery. Even the black in this palette is amazing. It is like so dark. I mean, look at that. That's like the blackest black ever. These are not patchy. These are crazy blendable, like I said, super buttery. If you guys are beginners and you don't really know how to use eyeshadow or how to blend it, or you're kind of scared or intimidated, I would definitely pick this up. Okay, so my third favorite palette is one that I use all the time in my videos. This is the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. You can tell mine's like super used because I've already hit pan on both of these eyeshadows, and I never hit pan on my eyeshadows unless I love them. So this one has a lot of warm eyeshadows, which obviously I love. You can tell by the first 2 palettes that I chose. I really like this orange color right here. I love this dark brown. You can build this up to almost look black, which is why I really like it, and it's super pigmented. I also like the 2 shimmer shades in this. They are really pigmented. I'm actually wearing Primavera on my eyelid right now. When you wet it with the brush, these are like super metallic, and I feel like you can almost use them for a highlight as well, just because of like the undertones that are in them and like the shimmers that they have. To be honest, I don't really use the pinks. I just kind of stick to like this brown, the orange, the shimmers, and then these transition colors. But I mean, I know that the other eyeshadow palette she came out with that was supposed to go with this was like really terrible, but this one is great quality. These blend super easy and they're super pigmented. Okay, so my 4th favorite eyeshadow palette of all time, I'm like blinding you guys with this. This is the Kat Von D Metal Matte Palette. Okay, the first thing that I love about this palette, so when you flip it this way, it says metal, but then when you flip it upside down, it says matte. I don't know why I thought that was so cool. Kat Von D designed that herself, and I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever that she actually takes the time and puts like art into her makeup line rather than just like sticking her name on something like a lot of other people do. but this eyeshadow palette is one of my favorites. I don't use color on my eyelids all the time. As you guys saw, like the first 3 palettes were mostly oranges and like warm tones, so this is something that I go to when I want color on my eyelids. One of my favorite eyeshadows in this palette is this one right here. This one is called Velour. It is a super pigmented, like bright, vivid, electric blue. I mean, look how pigmented that is. It's like almost neon, this eyeshadow. It swatches really well. There's a little bit of fallout just because of how hard I like dug my finger into it, but it swatches really well. It lasts a super long time on the eyelid. Just like all the other eyeshadows, these are easy to blend. All the eyeshadows that I pick are going to be easy to blend, obviously. That's why they're my favorite. These are super easy to blend. These are like crazy pigmented. This color Tinsel right here is like a super pretty silver eyeshadow. This one's super pigmented too. The only thing with these eyeshadows, I mean, look at that. That's like blinding. The only thing about these eyeshadows is that sometimes if you press a little bit too hard with your brush, they kind of fall apart, but that's just because they're so buttery and so soft and so pigmented that they're a little bit fragile. But there's really, really pretty eyeshadows in this one. I mean, you can do any kind of look. Like there's green, there's blue, there's pinks, purples, browns, golds, blacks, whites. This is just like a really diverse palette. I don't know if it was limited edition. I kind of feel like it was. It was a little bit pricey. It was like $60, but I mean, you get a lot of eyeshadows in it. And but yeah, this is a really good eyeshadow palette if you guys are looking to play around with color, because like I said, it still does have like the browns and the golds if you want to play it safe, but then you could also do something crazy with like blues or greens or pinks or purples. So my last eyeshadow palette is my absolute favorite out of all of these. This is my favorite eyeshadow palette. This is the Urban Decay Naked Heat, which I did a review on. I don't want to blind you guys with this mirror, so I'm gonna try to like cover it up with something. So I did a review on this palette. If you guys watched it, you'll know that I fell in love with this eyeshadow palette. It's kind of repetitive like the other ones, and I'm sorry. I love warm orange eyeshadows, but this one's amazing. These eyeshadows are so freaking pigmented, so blendable. This is just like my dream palette. All of these colors, I love every single one of them. They're my favorite one is this one right here, Ashes. This is like a really pretty, like kind of like a reddish purple, like a burnt purple. It kind of looks brown on my finger when you swatch it, but it's not like that in person. It's like a deep purple, kind of like burnt red. And then this one too, En Fuego, is obviously a lot more red, but these are the deepest colors in the palette. And a lot of the times I feel like with palettes, the deeper colors are the ones that tend to be like patchy or don't have a lot of pigment. These ones are super pigmented, super blendable. The shimmers in this palette are also amazing. This right here is Scorched. Even without wetting the brush, this one's like super pigmented, super blinding, and this one's not that expensive. I think it's somewhere around like $45 or $50. But this is definitely worth the price. If you guys saw my review, you guys know why I love it. Okay guys, so those are my top 5 favorite eyeshadows of all time. I know all of them were high end, but I really can't help that. There aren't that many drugstore eyeshadows that are pigmented like those ones, or that I personally use all the time. The Morphe is drugstore in my eyes because it is really inexpensive. Like I said, it's $22. And if you live in California, you can go over to the store in Burbank, which is not that far of a drive, and you could save money on shipping. Also, use my code ALEXMUA to get 10% off. So yeah, those are my top 5 favorite eyeshadow palettes. Those are the ones that I reach for all the time. If I were stranded on an island and I could bring 5 eyeshadow palettes, those are definitely what I would take. Those were all my favorites at a certain point in time, and those eyeshadow palettes are like the only palettes that I would use for like months when I first bought each one of them. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.